food has been, at this point, rising at a fairly steady pace, about 0.4% per month.
What are berries doing?
Tom.
On radio, it is McKee knows this. Washington has the best food.
They have berries.
John, they have fresh berries.
We're going to do this on air.
John is moving here.
Seriously.
Fresh fruits and vegetables were up 0.2%.
Oh, you've actually got the numbers.
I've got that right in front of me.
Well, can I ask a question? We were talking about before while Tom enjoys his berries on air. I'm curious about this disinflation that we saw in goods and now a reinflation of that disinflationary force. You talked about used cars. Used cars prices increased in the month of March, according to the latest Manheim indexes. We've also heard that furniture prices are increasing, et cetera, et cetera. How problematic is that with the sort of rolling recessions now rolling the other way?
Well, it could be a problem if that all holds. Now, we've gotten some data from both Barclays and Bank of America on their credit card spends in the recent month, and both have reported goods spending down significantly. So that'll take some price pressure off. It's the services that the Fed is still looking at. And of course, today we'll have our fancy graph of the J. Powell indicator, core services ex housing.
Are you seeing a little bit of division on the FOMC? Just starting to emerge, just a few voices looking for patience here.
I think that a lot of people have been looking for patience, but no, they all say we'll go one more and then we'll look around. There are some who've said, well, we'll go one more and then we'll see if we need to go more. But remember the dot plot. The median dot was at 5.1%, but there were 7 above that, including one at almost 6%. So it's not like this is anything new. They're going to be data dependent.
Are we just finding out who those dots might be?
Yeah.
Who those people are?
Essentially, that's what's
Do
happening.
you know who the dots are?
No. I mean, some people will tell you, and some people won't. I mean, we have a pretty good idea.
I'm laughing.
Jim Bullard's at the top.
I'm just imagining who are.
Hey everybody, welcome to Trading Capital's exclusive live stream of the CPI. Today is currently April 12th, and as we kick off this new live stream, we are going to be taking you into the CPI report, which is we're getting in 4 minutes. Market consensus is 5.2%, but I do think that it's going to be, even if the headline does come down or in line, it's really going to be dependent on what that core number is, what the Fed really looks at. Right now, the markets are kind of just flat, mixed, slightly positive on the S&P, slightly negative on the NASDAQ. Gold is up, Dixie's slightly down, Bitcoin's down, fell overnight. Natural gas is also down, oil's just slightly negative. But really, nothing as of yet that we can deduce. But in 4 minutes, we'll know how the market's reaction is. Obviously, we know the upside levels on the S&P 500. So we'll just keep the S&P up on the radar here, and I'll take you into the extended hours just so we can see the reaction. So let's take you on to the 5-minute chart. Basically, I have a big resistance between, let me just remove all of these drawings. We have massive resistance. It's trading at around 413, as well as 413.62. And then downside support levels we have around 404 is our first big one. 404.28. It can blast through those, but we'll see how big of a reaction we get off of CPI. Definitely pay attention to yields in the dollar, because that could spike. So our expectation is for inflation to come probably in line, or if I had to guess, it would be 1 basis point higher. So I think around 5.3. The headline comes in, but realistically, we know inflation is in a downtrend for now, and we'll just have to see if that continues. But again, the core PCE is what the Fed is really, really going to be paying attention to. And then obviously what aspects of the CPI print will come down. Is used cars spiking again? Is energy coming down still? Services starting to come down? Food coming down? Shelter coming down? I don't really think food and shelter are going to be coming down, but you never know. Time will tell. 2 minutes to CPI, 2 minutes to impact. So spiders are trickling down slightly. The calm before the storm. I got lots of windows up. We'll keep you abreast of the number. Spiders are rallying. CPI must be out. Oh, spiders are getting a big push here. Spiders are getting a big push. Bitcoin had a big push. Dollars dropping substantially. CPI month over month. So CPI 5%. So it came in lower than the market was expecting. Lower than what the market was expecting. So markets are taking that relatively well right now. Dollar has dropped. Markets have spiked. Bitcoin spiking. But we are heading up into some resistance here on the spiders. Let's see. Big rally on Wall Street right now. Oil's spiking, so that's inflationary. Apple's up, Nvidia's up, Bitcoin has a huge move to the upside, gold is surging higher. Everything is surging. Big. I prepped my members how to handle this yesterday. We have a game plan. Already executed some of that game plan. So the dollar is getting clobbered today. But I think this is going to be a buy the rumors, sell the news. I would not be shocked if we still head lower at some point in time. Maybe not today, but we have important data tomorrow. Oil just made a new high, breaking out of its little flag pattern. Natural gas is fairly muted. The dollar is just collapsing. So the markets are still surging here. Big surge for the S&P 500 and all other stocks. Spiders are still surging higher. The dollar's still dropping. No real bid on the dollar yet. Oil's still continuing to climb. The Russell's had a big move. Bitcoin's back over 30. Ethereum had a big pop to the upside. So there we go. CPI, positive reaction. Inflation, disinflation trends are coming down. Yields have dropped. The dollar's dropped. Now the big question is, how much of this gains will the markets keep? Trading at 413.24. Now the big, obviously there's moves making in the pre-market, but big players still are not playing in the pre-market yet. Although the market's moving, it's very easy to move this market in the pre-market like this. So obviously the big players will come out to play. We still have a lot of things to digest in the report. But as of now, definitely a positive rally on Wall Street. Gold is over 2,000 again. Bitcoin is charging, trying to make a new high here. We'll see if it can. The dollar's down to 101.53. So where this is decent resistance on the spiders. Obviously you can still see that there's this upside pivot, but that's much higher at 418. I do not expect us to get there yet. You're into this little bit of a gap fill on the daily chart right over here. All right, so we're gonna basically, I'm gonna go off the mic. I'm gonna have to calculate some levels, see what setups we get, and then we'll be back for around the 9:15 time frame to see if we can find any sort of trade setups that will bank us some winners here. So I'm going to do some calculations based off of this move, see where the markets settle out before the market open. Obviously I do think that the bigger move is likely done right now, but it doesn't mean that we can't reverse, sell off, keep flagging sideways to trend higher. But this is a pretty big move on the S&P. I mean, we're talking about intraday move right now from the low to the high. We're up already 0.9% on the spiders. And keep in mind that we did rally the last couple days, although yesterday was flat. We just have to be mindful that we could still absolutely reverse to the downside. But if there's a bullish pattern, we can look to go long via a potential technical bullish pattern. All right, I'm going to go quiet on the mic and we'll see you back in a few minutes.
Jay Bryson, Chief Economist at Wells Fargo. Dr. Bryson, thank you so much for joining today. One set of data does not make a trend. If we put together 3 months like this, what does it signal to Jerome Powell?
Well, so, I mean, if you look at the last 3 months, right, if that core rate was up 0.4%. And so if you look at the last 3 months, you're still running at an annualized rate of close to 5% there. Now, the good news is that the rent component, or the owner's equivalent rent component, is starting to come in. And so that should continue to put some downward pressure on inflation as we go forward. But we're still a long way from 2% at this point. And so, if you're Jerome Powell, you look at this and you say, I think Mike just said it, we're on the right track, but I don't think this makes the case for a pause in May. This and what we saw earlier in terms of the jobs report, I still think, knowing what I know right now, that they go 25 in May.
A lot of people agree with you, and yet they seem to be increasingly pricing out the potential for further rate hikes and possibly a great rate cutting cycle to start in the second half of this year. Jay, what would we have to see on Friday to discount the strength, the underlying strength and core that we see in this report, albeit perhaps not more than expected?
So when you say Friday, Lisa, are you talking about the retail sales numbers we're going to get out on Friday?
J.P. Morgan's earnings. J.P. Morgan earnings, bank earnings, and how much that lending stress.
Yeah, so right, if we're starting to see signs, and in the upcoming bank earnings, there's a lot of stress out there in the financial system, with banks in terms of their earnings, in terms of the credit standards, tightening things of that nature, that potentially could start to swing things in the direction of a pause in May. I mean, we'll see, what they say, what the banks say in the coming weeks here. But I think at this point that would be the thing that would, for me, would say, okay, maybe they actually go and pause, is what sort of stress we're seeing in the banking system.
Jay, there seems to be a complacency in markets about the fact that the Fed will be able to get inflation under control, that the rates will go back down to 3 or perhaps even 2% in the next couple of years. And I'm talking about 10-year yields. Are you less confident about that based on the increasing pressure for them to pause or just take a step back as they wait to understand what the dynamic is?
So in terms of the longer end of the curve, Lisa, I could see that going back to 3%. I mean, I just think that given the structural challenges in the U.S. economy today in terms of its long-run growth potential, for me, a long-run 3% 10-year yield makes perfect sense. I guess where I have a little bit more question is in terms of the 2-year yield. I don't agree with the view that the Fed's going to be cutting rates by the end of the year. I mean, potentially, right, if we're in a recession at the end of the year, I could definitely see that. But if we have, a soft landing in the economy, I could see the inflation rate here getting stuck at 3 to 3.5%. What does the Fed do at that point? Does it throw in the towel and does it say, okay, we can live with 3 and 3.5%, or do they really mean it? We need to get back down to 2%. And if they need to get back down to 2%, then you're not going to see, I think, rate cuts at the end of this year. I think you're going to see rates remain at a minimum elevated at that point. And so I have a little bit of a disagreement where the 2-year is right now.
Hey, Jay, you're not the only one. Jay Bryson of Wells Fargo, thank you, sir, on the latest inflation data in America, which spurs a big move at the front end of the yield curve. Yields lower by 11 basis points now. You can round it down to 12 if you wish. About 3.90 on a 2-year at the moment. Equity markets with a real lift, still positive by 0.8%. The latest data, 0.1% month over month on headline inflation. We were looking in our survey for a median estimate of 0.2%, so that's a little bit lower than expected and much, much lower than the previous month-over-month move. If you look at core, strip out food and energy, that comes in at 0.4, in line with expectations, and a very, very slight improvement on the previous month-over-month read of 0.5%. Seemingly, Tom, the takeaway from this one, this breathes a little bit more life into going again in May. Right. It doesn't provide more reason to do much beyond that. And I think that's the story that you see emerging at the front end of the curve.
Quickly here, the McKee cam shows a McKee that really needs to weigh in here. What do you got?
Well, I've got everybody's favorite number, the J. Powell index, which is core services X housing. And it's a major improvement from 0.43 increase in February to 0.29. So we're down quite a bit there.
Headline.
And the BLS does say in their release that it was housing and rents that really pushed up the CPI, offsetting the energy price drop because housing is such a big component in the CPI.
Equity markets picking up at 0.8% on the S&P 500. In the next hour on Bloomberg TV, Priya Misra of TD Securities, Colin Martin of Charles Schwab, David Kelly of JP Morgan. All of that coming up in the 9 o'clock hour on Bloomberg TV.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Trading Capital's daily live stream of the market open. So obviously CPI caused the market to spike higher, came in at a soft 5% number, and the market is rejoicing because rates and the dollar have fallen. But rates have rebounded off the lows. The dollar's still really testing the lows. You can see the spiders pulled in off the highs here. Basically the two resistance trend lines we gave you are working like a charm as of now. Now, the expectations for today, we have to be very careful because we are going to be gapping up. And even though it looks like we're putting in a bullish pattern in pre-market, what we have to be mindful of, let me just flip this over to the regular hours. This intraday pattern does not count. We're only going to be looking for a bullish pattern on the regular trading hours. So we're going to get a gap up. We're trading right now down here. In the pre-market, we did touch the high green line over here. So we know that there's a pre-market resistance up around this 414 level. Now, what I want to see in order to potentially go on a long trade is a nice bullish pattern forming. If we basically gap up, push up into that area and then reverse, that's not going to be good for the market. I do think the market is still extended even with the CPI print. I don't think we're having too much more upside as of yet, but nonetheless, stocks are rallying in the near term. There's still some weakness, which is surprising. This is not a full broad market rally, despite the S&P and the NASDAQ and the Russell up as we speak. So basically, I'm going to be looking for either a QQQ long via the QLD or a SPY long via the SPXL, but I'm going to wait for a pattern to develop on the long side. Initially, since we're gapping up, there's going to be some short plays. Basically, there's a couple levels I'm looking at. Let me just make sure that they are all technically sound here. Just trying to see which one are the biggest movers as well. Micron. So Micron's definitely on the hit list for a potential short. So Micron, let me put up Micron on my other screen here. Definitely. All right, so for Micron, just give me 1 second here. I think the 64, it might push to 65.50. There's a technical gap there, so that would be okay. Let me just see this other level here. So basically for Micron, anything above 60, let me just erase all of these trend lines here for now. Anything above 64, we're at that technical level now, but anything around the 64.94 level, maybe even 65 Pierce. So 64.94, we're going to short Micron, and then also around 65.45, there is a technical gap, and then we'll have to reassess from that point on. But those are the short levels I like on Micron. Initially, we want to fade the pop-up and then wait for a bullish pattern to develop to see what type of volume trends we get. Again, if the volume's light, favor a grind lower, but if the volume's heavy, that may dictate a little bit more of a trend formation. Microsoft's up, gold is pulled in off the highs, Bitcoin hasn't. It's interesting to see that even though the dollar made a new low, Bitcoin did not actually take out the highs. So that's a little bit of a relative weakness in my opinion. The fact that Bitcoin had a pop up and didn't take out yesterday's high, even though the dollar made a new low and yields falling, that's a little bit of relative weakness in my opinion. And you can see Bitcoin coming in nicely here. So definitely keep Micron on the radar. I might be interested in an S&P short if we hit this level again. We did hit it in the pre-market, but if we hit it in regular trading hours, say we go straight into it, I would look for another short at that level. If for some reason we get through those levels, you do have another big technical resistance. I'm just isolating it down here around 415. So let me just isolate these resistance down. You can see that the next big resistance, although you do have at these two, you have a technical gap fill here around 415.15, give or take. So Micron's really on watch. I do think the uptrend is extended. I think we're into key resistance on the S&P, the SPY here. And I think there's a good shot of buy the rumor, sell the news, where we could see an initial pop up this morning, and then I think maybe we could see a fade. Keep in mind that tomorrow we have the job loss claims, which is going to be pivotal for the market, because ultimately that's what a big portion of what the Fed looks at is the employment market. And obviously it's lagging data, but I think that's going to influence the market tremendously as well. And considering we're extended on the SPY daily chart, we just have to be mindful that any sort of move into resistance could be met with selling pressure. Obviously, if you get the right technical pattern to move higher, like for instance, looking at the daily chart, the resistance levels we're into some heavy resistance levels. I mean, you're going into these multi-pivots, this multi-pivot breakdown, this breakdown, and this little flag here is not enough consolidation, specifically on this light volume trends in terms of what you're going up to over here. So I'm just playing this cautiously, and we'll see what type of price action we get. And you can see we're stuck under this orange trend line still. The pre-market, it did peak us above, but we're still stuck under there. So Micron's on the radar for a short. It's trading at 64.50 now. It is a decent level that we're into, but I want a little bit higher. I think we can get a little bit more of a push when the markets open. All right, about 7 minutes to the open. Spiders are fading off the highs. Bitcoin is fading off the highs as well. Natural gas is under pressure. Oil's shooting up. Russell's definitely catching a nice bid. And honestly, the IWM is also coming up into a big resistance level here. I think that's also a potential short trade, guys. So keep your eye on the IWM. Let me just erase all of these trend lines for now. And let me turn on the... We have the 200 moving average around 179.64. That's going to be a big level. This blue little dotted line is the 200 moving average for the Russell. Then we have a technical gap around there. So the Russell, if we get a push into the 200, maybe even a pierce, we could also short that. So keep Micron, the Russell on your radar, and we'll just have to see how these markets open. I am liking Micron for a starter position. It's up 1.26%. The Russell's about 60 cents away as well from a short level. Tesla's very strong today. So Tesla's actually showing good relative strength. And what we can do is we can look for a bullish pattern to develop on Tesla to potentially go along. But we have to be very, very tricky because market gap ups typically are met with reversals. And if this market reverses lower while the dollar and yields are weak, that's not a good sign. All right, we have about 5 minutes to the open. 5 minutes to the open. And as we digest the CPI report, it wasn't really that impressive. It really wasn't that impressive. There's still a lot of components that are remaining very, very sticky. And keep in mind that this little bit of a rally is heading right into bank earnings, right into the payroll or the job loss claims, right into PPI. Alright, so the spiders are trading at 411.75, currently above yesterday's high. We'll see if it can hold on. Silver's acting well. You're seeing the markets under a little bit of pressure now. Markets are falling here. Interesting. Very, very interesting. You have Apple pulling in pretty sharply. Nvidia. We have 3 minutes to the open. We were able to pull off a beautiful just over 19% win on CRUS. This is a semiconductor name, a small cap semiconductor. And this was a swing trade that I did with my members. We basically shorted near the highs here and it dropped humongously we were able to pull off and cover around 85, 88 this morning when it dropped all the way down basically over here into this gap zone. So we netted over 19% on this drop. Magnificent little trade. And again, gap ups typically mean fading. Gold has pulled off the highs. Silver has also pulled off the highs, putting in bearish consolidation. Also looking at GDX for a potential short. I'm hopefully getting to 35.50. But let's see what happens here. We'll keep the spiders open. And then we'll keep Micron. I'm watching on my other screens. It's about 44 cents away from our technical level. So you might get a little bit of buy the dip momentum coming in, and then I do think it might be faded. Markets will be open in 1 minute. Apple's pulled significantly off the highs, but still up slightly on the session. So Micron is almost at our level, so definitely keep Micron on the radar. 64, 94 or higher. Even a 65 Pierce is pretty sound. Our markets are open. Big gap up on the spiders. Nvidia's popping up, acting well. Spiders are now coming in here. And remember, we were all the way up here in the pre-market. Touch that top green line. Nvidia is coming in sharp here. Tesla, there's a potential short on Tesla at 192.50, give or take. Micron's coming in pretty hard here. Gold's coming in. Microsoft's also under some pressure. Oil's really holding up well. A little bit of distribution occurring. Bitcoin's under minor pressure. Nat gas is coming in. The Russell's remaining outperforming. No real trades yet. You have Apple trying to push up. Spiders are trying to push up again. Apple's leading the surge higher along with Nvidia. No trades as of yet. Spiders are making a nice push now. They're coming up into a major gap fill around 412.40. Apple's pushing up. Gold is still lagging. Microsoft's pushing up. Nat gas is falling. Oil's still off of its highs. So spiders are into some decent resistance here, but it's not even at the pre-market highs yet. We're still waiting to see. Spiders are pushing up now. Apple, Nvidia, big surge. Micron still off of the level. Let's take a look at the GDX. That's pulled in pretty sharply here. Meta's going for double top. Keep Micron on the radar. That's almost at our level. It may get a push up there if the markets continue to hold up. You have a few stocks that are outperforming. Tesla's up 2. Amazon's still negative. That's interesting. Bank of America, AMC's flying. Plug Power, Apple's pushing up. So it's not a broad market rally. Nvidia's up almost 1%. Very interesting price action. And it's honestly looking like we may fade lower at some point. Let's keep the spiders on watch. They're still acting well, but they're still under resistance here. But they're nearing the highs of the session. Meta's pushing up for double top. Tesla's coming in pretty sharply now. Find it interesting that gold has almost got a huge reversal back lower. That's very, very intriguing. Healthcare is under a little bit of pressure. So that defensive sector is looking to not be so defensive anymore. Spiders are seeing some selling now. Micron has had a big pullback. So again, there is weakness in this market. I'm just going to warn you. Look at this sell-off in Micron. I mean, reversing pretty sharply here. If that's a little bit of a leading indicator, the semis might be under pressure. And basically, Micron wasn't the only semi. You had CRUS under pressure. AMD has reversed. Look at this. AMD almost negative. AMD's now gone negative. I mean, that is what the market is telling us, that this gap up is likely going to be met with sell side pressure. When you see semis, even look at Nvidia. Wow, exit liquidity. Nvidia is starting to come lower now. Interesting. AMD rolled over. Tesla's pulled substantially off the highs. Nvidia is about to go negative. There's definitely weakness in the semis here, guys. Definite weakness in the semis. I already added to UVXY with my members. This morning I gave them a pre-market prep. It is at a good technical level. I already added, full disclosure. So my members were privy to a little bit of a game plan that we prepped them for if the markets were to get this pop-up. I was kind of expecting it, and we were able to add to several key positions. And we'll see if these markets can go negative. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if we get a negative rollover in this market. That would not be positive for the market. Absolutely not positive. Let's take a look at EWZ. That's obviously beneficial. Pop. Let me just see if we have a short level in EWZ. Actually, this is into a decent short level. 3-bar surge on the daily. This is a good short level on EWZ. Let's see if the markets can... Let me just do a quick volume check. Markets are trying to bounce. What's the volume on here? It's a little light right now, but it should be okay. If we can get a push up through that 29, I will short the EWZ. Let's see if we can get back above that 29.45 level. All right, guys, I'm shorting the EWZ here. Starter position 29.46, 29.46. $29.46 short the EWZ. Next add level after that would be about 20 cents higher. So about 29.66. 29.86. Spiders are still acting very, very well right now. Micron's still reversed. Riot's pushing up. Spiders are still nearing the highs of the session. So you're seeing semis actually under a lot of pressure today. That's very interesting. Look at the Nvidia rolling over. AMD's already negative. Nvidia's almost gone negative. You know, and there's obviously lurking with the CRUS gapping down. That's a semiconductor. So EWZ is still pushing up. Spiders are now pulling off of the highs. Apple seeing some sell side pressure. Wow, look at that rollover on the semis. Nvidia's now negative. AMD's rolled over pretty hard. So again, the weakness in the semis might be a little bit of a leading indicator. Take a look at this SMH just getting slaughtered. Nvidia getting slaughtered, now negative. AMD, so this is a buy the rumor, sell the news event. Tesla rolling over. Apple's still holding up relatively well. Microsoft's under some pressure. Oil's holding up relatively well. Emerging markets are continuing to push up. Okay, get ready to add to this next level on EWZ. It's approaching that 2966 level. It's even actually a nice level to add right now because the spiders are falling lower. Shopify's up big today. That's definitely one that's... It was interesting because a lot of the bearish patterns that were forming, like Shopify had a nasty bear flag forming and it actually popped higher. Still at the top of its range though. Nvidia's falling at the lows. That's very, very interesting, guys. I find that super intriguing that Nvidia and semis are rolling over hard. This is not just a little rollover. Banks are still holding up okay. Very interesting. Here comes the spiders. New intraday low. New intraday low on the spiders. Apple. Wow, Nvidia's falling. New lows. This is super intriguing. Meta's rolling over. Spiders are rolling over now. Just like that, markets are in for a little bit of a treat here. A reversal to the downside. This is why you don't chase the price action. Bitcoin's even falling sharper now. Microsoft's almost negative. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Even gold is falling. Shopify is probably a great short level with that pop-up. That is an awesome, awesome trade there, Shams. I definitely think you're right on the money with that one. That one should come in pretty sharply. It's still a bearish formation. But again, we'll just really see it. Everything's a market trade still. But if semis are any indication of going negative, the market should also go negative. And that's an exit liquidity. Pop-up institutions just use that volume right away. Now on the spider daily chart right now, let's just do a quick volume check. We're trading at about 4.5 million. So it's still very light right now. Still kind of light. Doesn't mean it can't pick up, but it's still fairly light. So just keep that into account, specifically after the 11 a.m. time frame. The oil is pushing for the 200 daily moving average. That might be a decent short via the SCO. Just looking at a few other volatilities starting to increase. So the UVXY, if you were able to pick that up, awesome job. we were able to add via our plan, our pre-market plan that I gave my members yesterday. And oil is definitely pushing up now. So the markets are, Nvidia's at the lows. Nvidia's at the lows. Tesla's almost gone negative. AMD's rolling over hard. Spiders are still selling. The old gap and crack is happening here, guys. The dollar's catching a bid. Gold is also likely rolled over. And again, if this is the low in the dollar, I mean, it's going to be a lot of downhill price action for the overall markets. Oof, Nvidia falling sharper now. Natural gas is still under pressure. Apple's almost gone negative. So semis are leading this downhill charge. Take a look at this SMH. It's still falling. Still falling. QQQ definitely lagging. There's an aggressive long trade at gap fill in the Qs. Aggressive long trade. I would let it actually pierce and really retest these lows, but you could play the aggressive level on the Qs for a long trade. There will be a lot of buyers just sitting there. There's always a chance that we can go a hub. I'm going to wait. I'm just going to wait to see how things settle out because the semis are acting very weak. Very weak. I'm still watching EWZ. It hasn't hit our next ad level. That's still actually holding up relatively well. But I will add at 29.66 to that short. That one's an interesting play. I think it's had a nice 3-bar surge. Shopify's pulled in a couple percent, so probably nice net gain on your short there, Shimmy. Wonderful, wonderful job. China stocks are under pressure. Interesting to see China stocks under pressure despite the dollar weakening so much. So could we be at the stage now where market participants are going to price in a recession? That's kind of what I'm thinking in my logic. Apple's now almost gone negative. It's hitting its gap fill. Nvidia is now down substantially, over 1.27%. QQQ's still coming down. Spiders are also coming down. Spiders are way off their gap fill. Qs are hitting their gap fill right now. So take a look at the relative weakness. Spider gap is all the way down here. QQQ, we're actually hitting that right now. I don't want to play it yet because the spiders are still at a massive, massive level. They're still not really at some support. Oh, big dump through. You see what I'm saying? Big dump through. EWZ is still coming down. I still want about 20 cents on that trade at least. Spiders are coming down. You see how the Qs just slice through that gap? That is all weakness in the semis. Look at this rollover. Even gold. Wow, look at gold. This is all in a weak dollar. All right, guys, we're going to maybe play the Qs long here. Let's just wait. I want to see if the spiders can hit their gap fill, and then we'll play the QQQ long. EWZ, we're basically in the money on EWZ. We're flat on that trade. That's still holding up relatively well. But I am interested in playing the QQQ. I want it a little bit lower because the spiders have not hit support yet. They're hitting some short-term moving averages, but I think this market's very brittle. Microsoft's coming down some more. Bitcoin's pretty much rolled over. Gold has a nice daily reversal, topping tail forming on a weak dollar. This is a recession being priced in my opinion. Again, it could all reverse. We have to just see how the markets close today, but so far this gap up is extremely, extremely negative. Extremely negative. What a rollover. And we're going to wait to play the Qs long when the spiders hit their gap fill. Let's just see. I want to see the spiders hit their gap fill, but keep the Qs on the radar for a long trade. You can also play Nvidia likely, but semis are weak today. Tesla might be a candidate. All right, this market's just dumping right now. This is where interesting price action comes into play because whew, what a reversal. What a reversal. Even crypto is under some pressure. You have a beautiful reversal on Bitcoin. Massive, nasty, nasty topping tail. Dollar starting to catch a small bid. So is this the low in the dollar? Qs are getting a big bounce now. Definitely a big bounce on the Qs. But the spiders have not hit, the spiders didn't hit that technical gap. So I still remain a little bit skeptical that we could actually head lower. But if you were able to play the Qs long, that's pretty good. EWZ is just hovering. Nvidia's catching a bounce. SMH is catching a little bit of a bounce here. QQQs are obviously catching a pretty big bid here. Massive reversal down, guys. Semis are still weak. Tesla's at the lows. So even with that little bounce, these markets have not really made a big move or a big bounce. Still very weak. EWZ still coming down. Spiders are catching a small little bid here. Small little bid. QQQ's big bounce. EWZ were flat. But again, use those semis as a leading indicator that maybe these markets might be in trouble at some point in time. KRE's weak today as well. The Russell's still holding up relatively well. So spiders are getting a nice little bounce now. EWZ, that's still coming a little bit lower now as capital rotates back into the SPY, but we'll see. I think there's a lot more downside based off of this reversal. If the volume trends lighten up, that could change. Keep an eye on Nvidia as well. That's still selling. Lots of sell side pressure. Again, semis weak are indication that this global economy is weakening. Our world basically runs on semis, and that is not healthy. EWZ, we're now in the money. We're now in the money on EWZ. IWM still coming down now. Regional banks are under pressure now. Nvidia is still trading near the lows. That reversal on gold though, oh my. That reversal on gold is just something else. We're in the money about 10 cents on EWZ. Spiders are still under some pressure here. Take a look at the SPY. I'd be interested in playing the Qs again once the SPYs hit this, because the Qs are a little bit more oversold, so we could yield a bigger bounce. But if the spiders push down to this gap fill, the Qs should head lower. I'm thinking the Qs will likely test this low range pivot over here. Alright, so EWZ still just trickling. Even energy stocks are weak even though oil's strong. So XOM is starting to roll over. Gold has a beautiful reversal. Gold has actually now gone negative. Go figure. That's an indication that the dollar's likely going to get a bounce here. Alright, spiders are continuing to sell. So are the EWZ. Nvidia new low. AMD basically testing the lows. Apple's trickling. Microsoft's still hasn't tested the lows yet. Still slightly positive on the session, but hanging on by a thread. hanging on by a thread. Home builders are holding up well, but they're still coming down. Let's flip back to the spider chart here. They're catching a bid. QQQ also catching a bid, but semis are lagging. And again, if big cap tech lags, it's going to be difficult for this market to bounce, but the spiders are getting a bid. I still think we have to go to this gap fill. If the Q's filled its gap, it's very likely we see the spiders fill its gap. I think that's probably a fair assessment to make. But there are little pockets of strength going on. Apple's almost negative. Baba's down 4%. Very, very interesting. Big bounce on the spiders coming in here. Natural gas is trying to rally back, but it's still down. Markets are bouncing. Spiders are bouncing. The EWZ is getting a small bid. Qs are also pushing up. Regional banks are lifting up higher, which is helping the Russell. A little bit of buy the dip coming in, but semis are still weak today, guys. Keep that in mind. Semis are still weak. Big bounce in the S&P. Spiders are pushing up here. Dollar softened, which is why the spiders are taking a little bit of near-term advantage of that. But Nvidia hasn't participated. AMD's barely participated. Getting a small bounce now. Riot's pushing up. AAL's down 6.95%. That's an important barometer for the economy, airline stocks. Take a look at ETN. That's a magnificent bounce in the spiders. Basically, still waiting on our EWZ. That's bouncing tremendously well, but still under pressure. Spiders are definitely holding up. Interesting to see the semis didn't really participate, or they got a little bit of a bounce, but definitely lagging. Definitely lagging. Like, look at Nvidia. Just sell, 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 which is definitely dragging down this Qs, which should put pressure on the SPY at some point in time. Don't be surprised if we still trend back lower. Even look at that reversal in gold. Long-term rates are starting to grind up. They're trying to go positive. The 20-year is trying to go positive. That'll be very interesting if that happens. Let's take a look at those GDX. They probably reversed hard. Yeah, look at that. Should have added there. I was waiting for 39.50. Thought we maybe got a little bit more of a push up. Take a look at AAL. Whoops. That one's had a massive fall. Let me see if there's any long trades on this particular stock here. But this is the dangerous thing. This is all bearish consolidation. So you have to go much, much lower on AAL. And since the market's weak right now, I would look for around 1273. That's the only level, long day trade level that I have on the radar, is around 1273. I would not be surprised if it gets there. Let's keep the spiders on watch. EWZ is starting to trickle down a little bit more now. I would not be surprised if EWZ also goes negative, or at least comes down to fill the majority of this gap. But we're going to have to wait for the spiders. It's kind of a short SPY trade right now, pretty much. Nat gas is trying to perk up just a little bit. Still down in the session. Oil's holding up relatively well. It's now half an hour into the market session, and we've definitely pulled off of the highs. And again, what's interesting about that inflation number is the month over month was higher. And a lot of the sticky components like food, shelter, services actually didn't decrease. It was really just energy. So what's the scenario if energy starts to increase like we've seen in oil? What's the scenario if natural gas starts breaking out? What's the scenario about these gasoline futures that I always watch pretty much every day? And you have a massive, massive bullish pattern that's undertaking here. You have a beautiful inverse head and shoulder, left shoulder, head, massive right shoulder. You have broken out on gasoline futures. You've broken out here, you broke out there. It's like no matter which way you spin this, you've broken out. Tesla's looking very negative, forming bearish intraday patterns. EWZ is still coming down. Nvidia is catching a small bounce. Lots of bearish patterns developing as of now on the S&P. Lots of little bearish patterns. And again, believe it or not, I have a downside calculation of today if the markets really start selling off. I have a downside calculation of about 404.46. 404.46. Roughly down around this green zone. That's my level of where I've done a measured move calculation all the way down today. It's quite a ways off, but just be mindful that it could happen. Then I have an upside move of roughly 415. Obviously, we touched the 413, 414 level in pre-market, but we have not been able to get there since. Another wave of selling occurring in the spiders here. We'll see if we get more downside in the EWZ. I'm still short the EWZ, holding that lower, holding that lower. It's basically a spider trade. I'll look to cover the EWZ pretty much when the spiders hit that level, that gap fill. I think it's very likely. You're seeing the Russell now turn negative or just slightly positive. It's about to turn negative. Bitcoin's definitely under pressure. Nvidia new low, Tesla new low, Apple's putting in a bear flag, AMD's putting in a bear flag. So spiders are definitely under pressure still. They're not out of the woodworks yet. Amazon's negative, Tesla's almost gone negative. Keep that AAL for a long trade. I do like American Airlines. It's coming lower. That 1273 is a decent level. EWZ is catching a nice bounce now. Take a look at the home builders. They're still up on the session. Depot, RF. Still forming a little bit of a bearish pattern on the SPY, but there are buyers here as seen by the wicks, so they could always push it up, specifically if the volume trends remain light. Nvidia is catching a bounce now. So here this might be the bounce coming in the markets. McDonald's pushing up new high. Wow. That is crazy. What a powerhouse in McDonald's. Oracle's also surging. That stock is just impressive. Oracle short at gap fill. If it were to hit in the next, say, 10 to 20 minutes, straight shot into the 95.90 and maybe 96 Pierce level, we could have a short on Oracle. It's got a ways to go though. So Nvidia is catching a nice bounce now. So the semis are going to help lift this market. Nvidia is catching a decent bounce. That's because the dollar has softened a little bit. Definitely lots of wild price action in this market. Very intriguing to watch. Very, very intriguing. So Nvidia and semis are helping lift this market. Apple's had a nice bounce. Russell's had a nice bounce. Spiders are pushing up. So EWZ has also had a bounce, but it's still semi-lagging. You're still inside of this bullish bar at this moment in time. Obviously, if the spiders keep pushing up, EWZ will push up. Still looking at AAL, it really hasn't bounced. Nvidia's still down 1.3. Now we look for what type of patterns form off of this. The dollar's putting in a bear flag, which is going to help the markets. So full disclosure, I'm already short coin as a swing, so I'm expecting downside. As for a day trade, I can't really chase a short because it is down. What I would have to wait for, considering this is still technically a bullish pattern, coin could actually move higher. Now, Bitcoin's reversed off the highs. I see Riot pumping, so a lot of the sympathy trades are pumping. But again, if you get a little bit of a bear flag on coin here, maybe in the next 10 minutes we could look to short it. But as of now, I can't chase it that it's down. If coin was to like basically go back up into this pivot high over here, then we could look for a short. But markets are catching a bounce here. They definitely are. EWZ is not participating, which is good to see. The Dixie is definitely softening. Look at that bear flag forming. Nvidia, big bounce. Riot is probably a better short. If you're wanting to short crypto, Riot is definitely a better short at these levels. It's had a magnificent move, and you're into this good $13 psychological number. 3-bar surge on the daily chart. So Riot's probably a decent short. Full disclosure, I am shorting Riot as a swing. Spiders now maybe are forming another bear flag here. Natural gas is coming down. Oil is also starting to uptick a little bit. KRE seeing another round of selling, so that should push the market lower with regional banks under a lot of pressure. The KRE is almost negative. Almost negative. Let's take a look at the Jets. Jets is a good, wow, look at the Jets, and that's primarily due to AAL falling sharply. Let's look at the Dow transports. So the Dow is under some pressure. It's actually negative. Interesting. Spiders are getting a big bounce here, though, holding the positive gains. Apple's pushing up, Nvidia's pushing up, oil's pushing up, XOM's pushing up, dollar's falling. It's all really related to the dollar falling. Take a look at the Qs. They're also creating a nice bounce off of the lows. Meta's had a beautiful rally and push up. Big push coming in the spiders because the dollar just is making or testing the lows of the session. So the dollar's testing the lows of the session, but the Qs and the SPY are still way off the highs. So a little bit of a relative weakness divergence in the markets. But as of now, they're getting a big bounce. Definitely a big bounce coming in, so you have to respect it at this point in time. Tesla's had a nice bounce. Apple's back to the positive side. Now there's a couple short plays if we test the double top again on the spiders and specifically the Qs. So I'm looking at the spiders coming up into this wide range break bar resistance, but the QQQ might be a potential short trade if you push up to these pivots, just a pierce of 317, maybe 317.10. Obviously, I'm still holding this EWZ. I think this one's going to fall. I just have to wait to be a little bit patient. But if the Qs get back into these pivots here around just a pierce of 317, I am interested in shorting. Take a look at Riot. That's pulled off of the highs. Still, if it were to get above this 13.15 in the next, say, 5-10 minutes, you can short that as well. Let's see the spiders. Still monitoring the Qs as well. But a nice big bounce in the spiders here as of now. The big question is, will it hold up? Gold's had a nice bounce as well. Nvidia's still bouncing. EWZ is trying to push up again. So the market's kind of quieting down now, settling in. Let's see what type of trend we get here. Dollar's still at the lows, very, very weak. Yields are trying to bounce back to the 200 moving average, the 2-year yield at least. It's trying to close on that 4%. So around that 317.07, I will look for a short on the Qs. 317.07, a short on the Qs. Nat gas is still under pressure. Lots and lots of pressure on nat gas here. And that's been moving in lockstep with the overall dollar. And the dollar's under pressure, nat gas is under pressure. When the dollar's bouncing, it seems nat gas is bouncing. Very counterintuitive to the commodity-dollar relationship. All right, get ready on the Qs here, guys. Get ready on the Qs. I am interested in taking a short. EWZ is trickling a little bit lower now. That Riot is also a potential short. Riot, R-I-O-T, at pierce of that double top. I'm going to stick to the Qs, safer for me, heavier position. No buyout worries. It's obviously less volatile, less risk, less reward. But I'm okay. I don't want to go crazy. I already have Riot as a short swing. So I'd much prefer shorting the QQQ. Spiders are still pushing. The dollar's testing the lows. Regional banks are still under pressure. So now mega cap tech is getting a nice rotation of capital. Starting with Apple. Nvidia's bounced. AMD's had a nice bounce as well. Basically flat on the EWZ. Spiders will keep pushing up here. Qs are definitely lagging, but they've turned positive again. Look at the spiders, how this big rally. Qs are definitely my primary, but spiders at that double top can also be a potential short. Russell's starting to come in now, so small caps are leading the weakness. Interesting to see that Bitcoin really hasn't bounced and participated, although it's still technically holding an inside bar 10-minute pop-up. All right, the Qs are coming up here. Spiders are also pushing. Dollar is testing the exact low of the dump, the initial dump. And it's looking very, very weak right now. Qs pulling in slightly. But a big bounce in the markets. And again, do we see more liquidity come out of this market? I think the barometer for this market is also the KRE, under a lot of pressure right now. Do an IWM check. This is forming a nice bear flag. Definitely weakness in the banks. Maybe people pulling money off the table before the banking earnings. So Qs, I am still interested in adding to the EWZ if it pushes higher, but it's really a spider short, the EWZ. Dollar just made a new low. So the spiders have not made a new high yet, despite the dollar making a new low. And the big question is, at what point do market participants start pricing in a recession? Spiders are still pushing up here. Qs are still pushing up. I'm still interested in the Qs. Just had a float higher. XOM just made a new intraday high, so that one's acting very, very well. Oil's taking a little bit of a breather. Nat gas is still under pressure. KRE still at the lows. So despite the spiders and Qs pushing up, KRE still at the lows, and the Russell is forming an intraday bear flag. So a trend pattern maybe on the Russell to short it. The Russell's definitely very, very weak. KRE just went negative. So the Russell's also a relative weakness play where we could short this bearish pattern. I'm going to stick to the Qs though, because I think they're more of the overbought names. But a big, big bounce in the market. Tesla's forming a nice bear flag as well on the intraday 10-minute. Look at this bear flag forming on Tesla. That doesn't get any more clinical. And I mean, a downside break takes you probably down to about 185.60, maybe even this gap fill at 184.50. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So the markets are kind of quiet now. KRE's still making new lows, but getting a small little minor bounce. XOM is pulling to the highs. You can see the Qs softening a little bit. It's due to Nvidia softening. Another wave of selling coming in tech. Interesting to see the regional banks are bouncing while the Qs are selling off. So definitely capital rotating in and out of the banks, into tech, in and out of tech, into banks. Ooh, Qs. Look at this big dump on the Qs coming in. That's definitely led by Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, and Tesla. Tesla looks to be breaking, almost on the precipice of breaking that bear flag. Definitely. Riot's also coming in pretty sharply. It's actually putting in a 30-minute topping tail potential. China stocks are still under pressure, likes of PDD getting smoked here. PDD, there's an interesting technical level for a long setup. The level I'm looking at on PDD is around 65.50. There's a gap fill at 65.80, which may be decent support. But around 65.80 is decent on PDD. That's an interesting level. It's a little bit concerning you're consolidating, but 65.80 is a decent level on PDD. See the spiders. Coinbase is getting rocked now, so is Riot. So that's indicating that maybe so anyone that was able to take a short above 13, nice job. You're deep in the money. Just protect that trade. I know Shams was mentioning coin. That put a little bit of a bearish pattern, and look at that little reversal down. So nice job on that. Protect that trade. Likely will go lower because Bitcoin's seeing some sell side pressure. The Russell's breaking. KRE, look at this barometer of the market. Definitely weakness in banks ahead of earnings. Wow. Wow. And look at this IWM bear flag breaking. Clinical bear flag. You take out this low, we're heading down to this wide range green bar. This will be your little breakout bar on the intraday chart. And this is a little bit of a bearish engulfing candle on the 5-minute. Doesn't mean we can't trend higher. It's just there are sellers being present in this market. EWZ, I'm still short EWZ. Basically flat on that trade. I'm looking for more. I'm looking for at least this red trend line and maybe even this lower trend line. Being a little bit greedy, but I think we can. All right, so the Qs are pushing back up again. I'm no longer interested in that 317. I'd have to let it pierce by at least another 10 cents or so. $317.20 is my new level on the Qs. But it's a little bit more aggressive now. I may actually just hold off and see if there's any other setups, because the markets are kind of going into float mode here. For a CPI number, it's actually pretty light volume. I'm surprised. So that 317 level actually was working well. It hit 317.02. Got a quick pullback there of about 35 cents. The dollar's starting to pick up here. KRE new low. KRE is making a new low. So Apple's holding up well. So people are flocking into Apple yet again. Financials are under some pressure. Regional banks definitely seeing some sell side. So money's flowing out of banks ahead of earnings and likely into mega cap tech like Apple. That's what we're seeing here. Because this KRE is still trending lower. Let's take a look at JP Morgan and Bank of America, because look at these KREs. I mean, whew, nasty. Let's do Bank of America. That's coming down, underperforming the market. JP Morgan. If JP Morgan were to come into this gap fill and straight shot, we do have a long trade. Super aggressive, but we do have a long trade. That'll be interesting. But the bank should weigh on the spiders and the Russell. And notice how this bear flag is still intact on the Russell. You can actually play this for a short. You can short it now and just put your stop loss above this red bar high. If you get a close above that, you stop out. But you have a nice bear flag that should take you down lower. That is a decent short setup on the Russell, the IWM. All right, I'm shorting the Russell if we get a little bit of a bounce here. I'm going to short it at 177.41 here, 177.41, IWM short. 1.6%. Look at this, already 10 cents in the money. We do have a gap fill. A lot of people are going to be waiting there, but you've consolidated. So the next big level is your impulse breakout bar here. We're going to test the low of that range. I'm looking for a cover around here. Look at this. All right, we're short the IWM at 177.41, basically on that green line. The dollar's starting to uptick a little bit more now. Regional banks at the lows. Regional banks at the lows. EWZ's under a little bit of pressure as well. Nat gas is dumping hard. Oil's dumping hard. Dollar's starting to creep back up. So we're basically flat on both trades, both short trades. Tesla's looking very weak. These spiders are trying to hold up and bounce. I'm going to give this IWM a little bit more wiggle room. I will add to my short trade if it comes all the way back up to these highs here, around 178.03. I will add to my short trade if it perks up there. But the regional banks are bouncing now. Mega cap tech is still seeing some distribution. Riot is almost gone negative. So you're seeing the Russell bouncing now. It was a little bit of a fake out triggering that little bear flag. It never actually triggered it. Doesn't mean it can't still go lower in the near term. I'm still seeing lots of weakness in the banks. So big bounce coming in the Russell here. So markets are bouncing, spiders are trying to hold up. 2-year yield is back above 4%. Find that very interesting. Russell's bouncing along with the banks. Tech is bouncing as well. Really whippy day right now. Market participants are kind of unsure, but markets are positive as of now. Apple's pushing for the high of the day, so Apple's single-handedly lifting this market higher. But there's still a lot of red out there. You have Nvidia down, AMD down, a lot of the semi names. Meta's pushing up again. Regional banks have had a nice bounce. Bitcoin's starting to perk up. So on the 5-minute charts, SPY above all the key moving averages. Short-term trend is positive, but you're still inside of a heavy sell-off bar, wide range sell-off bar. I will add it appears of this 178 to the Russell. Never quite got there. Bank of America is looking like it's... Bank of America is negative. JP Morgan's negative. XLF is negative. KRE's basically negative, all in a positive market. So definitely a lot of weakness in the banking sector. And that doesn't instill much confidence in market participants, in my opinion. At least not for me, it doesn't. Volatility is still negative. China stocks are still getting slaughtered. Nat gas is down pretty big today, down 3.44%. Still holding a bullish intraday pattern, believe it or not. So Russell's seeing another round of selling now. So the crude oil inventories, let's just take a quick peek at oil. Oil's starting to maybe see a little bit of a buyout. Inventory expectation was a drawdown of 0.583 million barrels, and it came in at 0.597. So a bigger drawdown, which is likely showing increased demand in oil, but we'll see how the price action responds. So IWM, we're basically almost flat. EWZ, we're basically flat, slightly in the money. I still think the IWM is setting up for a bigger break lower, especially ahead of bank earnings. This is a nice bear flag forming, but we need to take out these pivots. You've been defended here, defended here. We just need to take out these pivots. I think there's a shot. The 2-year yield is basically trying to go positive. Still watching silver and gold. So the Russell now, we're in the money on the Russell. That Russell gap fill is minor resistance. Look at this dump on the Russell now. Here we go. So we're in the money on the Russell. We're in the money on the EWZ. I want more on the Russell. Hopefully we can get another little drop down to about here on the Russell. So I'm looking for about 50 cents to 60 cents on the Russell. EWZ is falling sharper now. Apple's pulling off the highs. Tesla broke its bear flag. Tesla broke its bear flag. So that's similar to what the Russell is going to be doing in a second here. And being the fact that Tesla broke its bear flag, you're likely going to see the Russell break its. Look at this. Nvidia has a bear flag. Apple doesn't. Microsoft doesn't. But Tesla, AMD, Nvidia, they all have bear flags. Even Coin has that bear flag. Natural gas falling a little more now. Getting a little bit of a bounce here. But Tesla's looking exceptionally weak. The downside target on Tesla is right around 183.88, a Pierce of 184. Pierce of 184 on Tesla. You maybe have a daily topping tail forming on Riot. That's been a stellar short. Crazy volatility here. Here comes the IWM, guys, and EWZ. We're in the money nicely. Let's see if we can get a final capitulation flush on the IWM. I'm looking for at least 50 cents here. We're hitting the gap fill, so a lot of buyers are there, but we consolidated above that, so we should go through that level. We should go through that level. There's definitely buyers there, but we should go through that level.